Welcome to the Koori Knockout Podcast. If you are tuning in, make sure you like, subscribe, and follow us on all platforms, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, we're everywhere. Make sure you tune in, make sure you subscribe. Really appreciate you tuning in. We've got a special one today. We've got Matt back on the podcast. We've got Tommy Tuck and we've got Dean Witters back here on the podcast. We want to discuss a few things that are coming up for this year's knockout. So plenty of chat about this year's knockout. But first up, Tommy Tucker's got a wrap for us on the Collie knockout that took place out at Collie and Moree. Big congratulations to the Collie Bulldogs and everybody who was involved in the organisation of that. Who was the winner, Tom?
West Magpies. I think it consists of Garuga. It was a Garuga team. And they had a lot of Group 4 players, a lot of hometown Garuga boys, and I think they beat Mungandai in the final. Mungandai, they seem to come up in all these finals.
Jeez, I tell you what, it must have been a decent final then. If the Mungandai always hard to beat in them little knockouts.
No, I think they were well recruited. The West Magpies, run by Gubwood.
Who they have? Yum Yum and
Breno, I think Cocker, and a few. Who else they have?
Breno's still good, eh? Is he?
He'd have been just.
He looks like he doesn't lose a beat.
No, he just controls all the tempo of the game, the slow, the fast, the fiery. He takes over. And Yum Yum there, if Yum Yum's in the side, he's the enforcer. He can talk any opposition out of the game, I can tell you.
Now I tried to find out who did well out there, and I called Rika Lamb, and I said, who's the best players out there? She said Farron was the best. She said Robert was the best. She said Caden was. She just started going through all of her mob, so I didn't get a proper answer on who actually ripped it up out there. But I know it would have been a pretty solid final, and.
I think anyone that's watching this, send in your comments about who tore it up out there. So I reckon Farron, by watching him at that Moree knockout, I know Faz can knuckle down.
He's in good form, mate.
Yeah, he can push it with the best. He's a tough fella. He just keeps going when you think the engine's out. He's a good player.
he's been versatile the last couple of years too. I mean, he was on the wing. For a long period of time, but I've noticed he's starting to get closer and closer to the action. Even sort of plays a bit of back row and stuff now, don't he?
Well, he played back row out at Moree. He played back row at the Dubbo knockout with the Condobolin team. What are they called?
That's because he's shearing sheep now. He can chuck them around in the middle. He lifts them up, chuck them around like sheep.
He's work fit. He's tough. He's tough. Those conditions, you know.
Get in there, scoop them up.
They always say working in the sheds is the toughest work you do, along with being a brickies labourer or something. You know, them fellas are just robust.
Chipping's hard.
Yeah. I've never done any of it in my life.
But chip and tuck?
No, nothing. I can't get out of bed, little late. I'm not going to go down early. What time they go to work, them fellas? 4 o'clock in the morning, I reckon, with their bike tubes around their ankles so the snakes can't bite them.
My young fella went out there. They put a Redfern side in the Collie knockout too. They drove all the way out there. Redfern Rangers. This next generation is of kids. So the Redfern Rangers wear Power Rangers jerseys and shorts and socks. And they've had Ninja Turtle jerseys before in the past. It's these kids in the video games they're playing and the TV they're watching.
So how'd they go, Dino?
I like the creativity though. That's mad.
You should see it looks good actually when they put the jerseys on, but they're dressed as Power Rangers. They went out there and
they need them powers to play out there. Tough conditions.
How do they psych up before the powers combine with our powers combined?
They put the headgear on and think they got
done by Mungandai in the second game, so they played a little Collie side there, and my young fella, he's captain of the boys, but he just said it's a big trip they do every year there, and young Knox there plays with Redfern and been around the community, and he's a Collie boy, so they all go out there to support him, put a Redfern side in. But it's a 9-hour drive out there for the boys, so it's a long trip on a long weekend.
But what happened to him when he walked out and done the toss?
Yeah, so
you allowed to talk about this?
Well, might as well. He told me the story. So he does the toss on the first game, and apparently people weren't happy that Redfern was out there. They must have thought, what he's coming out here
pretty
from
good,
the city to ruin our little knockout. And the bloke, he won the toss, and he said, "I will kick off." And the other fellow said, "Dean, we were going to run the ball anyway, you cocksucker." So he called him that straight away, put it on him straight away. And so I don't think he felt welcomed out west straight away. But he said this is before the game started. Old Bud was into him. So
George made a comment on that too. What would you have done back then if someone done that to you?
Nah, You say what you said.
Someone said, "Oh, fucking drove that prick," and I said, "What would you done, Tucker?" I said, "I can't fight. I'm too windy." I just let him go.
No, look, it reminded me of that Dubbo knockout that year when we played Griffith, and before the game even kicked off, we nearly had a blue. I remember we were walking along, and I don't even know what even happened. There was a toss or something, and Andrew Fafita said something. And,
Matt might have been doing that thing that Trenny was doing with Pom.
What'd you say? And then we were nearly going to have a blue before the game even started.
Matt.
I was on that hill up there, and you could not take your eyes off that game for 1 second. Yeah. And there were probably more fights than football actually played.
The Sunday morning.
It was one of the best, for drama, for theatrical.
Same as the Bathurst knockout with them.
Yeah, there's no lie. There's been some really good rivalries with three ways. That it started. The first one started at Bathurst. Was the first year they were in for a long period of time, and
that was their second knockout.
Was it their second? Yeah, okay. Because Robbie John played with us the year before when we won it. We won it in 2009.
2 years before that.
And then they must have. Did they go to 2010? Did they go to
three ways played against Gaduga at Woy when you won the knockout?
So that was their first year. Yeah, you're right, Tuck. So their second
solid.
year in, and we drew them first round in Bathurst, and it was crazy that atmosphere for that first game. There were just people everywhere, even though it was freezing cold. I don't know if you remember, it was ice cold that day. Went out and it was one of those games where everyone just wanted to watch, and we've been in a few of those, and it was then followed in Dubbo a few years later when we win it. Both times they actually knocked us out, I think.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah, I think
I was filthy that 2011 one because that was the year Manly made the grand final.
That's right.
And I had captain's run that morning on the Saturday, and I was filthy because I wanted to be there. I actually wanted to play in it, even though you were
playing Warriors the next night.
We played the Warriors, and so I finished captain's run. And as soon as we finished stretching, we said we're good to go, and I just sprinted home. I only lived across the road from Brookie Oval. I sprinted home to watch it on TV. I reckon I nearly smashed my TV watching that game. It was a hard game to watch,
tough.
and I think there was that rivalry just built off the back of that. Then with Griffith, and we've always had good games with them. Always. And we have lost most of them.
That intensity in that game at Dubbo, right, must have been something else on that field because every moment was just
smash.
It was just kill or be killed. It was. I just remember watching it and just thinking, everyone out there on this field is giving their all. And I think it was David Fafita come up with a big play.
Mad run down the
sideline, wasn't it?
And a couple of palms.
Yeah.
Passes the old cousin inside and he does the back flip or the front flip after he scores it.
I think they only got us by 2 points, but in that game. Same as
all the way
Bathurst.
through.
I think with the Bathurst one that made it like a big rivalry, that was when the Fafitas first come onto the stage at the knockout. They played a bit in the NRL the year before and they turned up to Bathurst, basically our home turf again, and they turned up and they played us, and knowing Matt the way he was and how competitive he was, he'd do anything to niggle these fellas off, and Niggles turned into pushing shoves, and Trenny's there too. He's never far away, and next minute you just did a battle, and it's a fierce battle. And
what a rivalry. Wackworth, Griffith in those years.
It went on, and we've talked about in other podcasts.
What other rivalries that have been big like that, do you reckon, boys? What have you seen over the years where there's been big rivalries?
Narwan's big rivalry.
Narwan and Moree were always a big rivalry, but never got to play each other a whole heap. We've only sort of had 2 or 3 games against them at that.
Who's got the wood there?
Narwan never lost to Moree in the knockout. Right. It's only once when.
Wait there.
It was my first ever year in the knockout. I was only 15, and that was the only time Moree's ever beaten Narwan in the knockout. So we've got a real good record against them. It's always Moree or Kempsey. They're the 2 teams we have the rivalry.
Yeah, right.
I don't know about the 2 rivalries that come together, but there's always the local fellas that come together, or the teams that have got, like you said, Moree and Armidale and Narwan, they a lot of mob.
Yeah.
Some other teams that have come along and played against each other like that before, like John O'Wright's last podcast, he said he played for the Kempsey fellas and they played against Campbelltown Ghosts, and there's always a big lot of family in that other side that's probably played in the other team. Who can we think of?
NAB and Yowies obviously is a big one when they go up against each other. But I think for me, when you look at the rivalry and then to play each other in early games, you can't go past that whack Griffith because you kept drawing each other right at the start of the knockouts. And that's when the energy's high, everyone's fit and fresh, and you're going to just see people go 100 miles an hour at each other. Where other teams, like I know Nambucca and Moree, never really played each other a lot in those first 1 or 2 games because you'd see fireworks if it did, but it's never eventuated. But you fellas eventuated nearly three years in a row or something for you.
Well, I reckon the best we played against them was when we played them. Was it a Sunday Arvo that we played them? At Raymond Terrace.
Yeah.
And so we were a little bit tighter when we got to it. So we were just straight into the footy. And that was when I seen the worst head eye I've ever seen in my life on big Peter Jensen. When he got head-eyed, I could not believe it. He got carried off. He ended up coming back on in the grand final though when we needed him the next day.
But that was a big game.
It was a massive game.
Similar sort of circumstances where it was really intense. Went down the wire, but we end up winning that one. That might have been the year
we won it. 2014.
Yeah,
Well, I drove home thinking, don't be surprised if Wild get beat by these fellas because it's always been a tough game. And when you won, I thought, the boys are on. They'll win this knockout.
Yeah.
And I think that going back to matching up with rivalries, this was anyone that Wild ever played. In the time that I've been around this in the late 2000s, you just play against NAB. There's always been big push and shoves. Yowies has been big.
But no one was.
No one was big.
big.
We had some good clashes.
These are excellent.
Days,
there was another one there. I can't remember. It was, but yeah, there's been plenty of games where.
Well, I think he's a marked when you walk in. When you walk in the ground,
Obviously
he's a marked straight away. Everyone, he's a marked, and
last year too.
I reckon Redfern to a certain extent for a couple of period of time where it was no different when they had that really
Where's them?
really successful era where they had really good players and they were marked when they walked
Everyone
in,
wanted
and there
to
was
take
some
them.
good games that happened there.
Everybody wanted to beat them, mate.
The Waterloo game, I think we spoke about on another podcast. It was a really close game. There was some good rivalry there because there's a lot of, like you said, Tuck, would be sort of mob against mob or cousins against cousins, mates against mates in where they grew up. So I know that was an exciting game that happened at Henson Oval,
Henson
wasn't
Park,
it? Henson Park?
We spoke about that last
And I've got to mention the one that we haven't mentioned, the Moree versus Laparoos rivalry. They hate each other, them two communities.
they do, actually.
I don't think it's any love lost there between those two communities.
They had a couple of protests against each other.
They've gone to town for years. Even back in the days, they went to town on each other.
Are we allowed to talk about protests and who sat on the fields?
Well, Tuck, we won't go into protest because otherwise we might be here all day. But
No, wait, can I just say that remember they used to be like $100 or $200?
Yeah.
They had them put them straight up to
we put it up to 2,000 and then
so
everyone stopped protesting.
No more.
I mean, the good thing about it, I reckon, the knockout and thinking about the rivalries that exist and the rivalries that are coming is that's what makes a knockout as well. Is that when you come to that draw on a Wednesday night, this year it's going to be Thursday. We'll talk about that, but it comes to a point where you look ahead and you go, "What's that first round look like?" Who's the 2 or 3 games you're going to watch that day? Because no matter what, the Saturday is a day where everyone turns up and we all go around and watch as much footy as we can that day. As the knockout progresses, it's hard to watch all the games because on the Sunday you play 3 games, but on that Saturday you only got 1 game. Whenever you're playing, morning or afternoon, if you're on in the afternoon, that morning you're trying to get your fix and trying to look at who's playing in the big games on that Saturday. And that Saturday draws out at least 2 or 3 big games, I reckon, that everyone gets super excited about. I mean, you look at our game last year.
That crowd.
Like the crowd that rolled in for that.
She was big.
Unbelievable.
We looked around there. I reckon
Even the reaction, though, when it got drawn out
it was for days.
at the draw, that was...
I never seen something like that, to be honest. Like
The Sydney All Blacks game?
Sydney All Blacks first
wow.
whack. Bro, I arrived at the knockout as that game was just kicking off, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I walked in there and I was like, you couldn't get to the field. I was trying to walk to the field. They were
It was 10 deep.
10 or 12
She was
deep.
bad.
Yeah.
Well,
You couldn't
it was
get there.
10 deep, boys, and I promise I seen people climbing up the light poles. There was people climbing up the light poles just so they could see over in the ground. So I have, in my whole time going to knockout, I have never seen a crowd that size on a Saturday, probably even for any game that we've actually played in ourselves, or any game I've watched.
It was almost like the grand final before the game. She was quiet before kickoff too. It had that feeling, you know. And I was thinking, just looking at that game before, and I'm going, far out, I don't know, but the boys are going to have to be on there.
Oh, so it was exciting. It was exciting to be part of. To be honest,
Ronnie Gibbs was working on the other ovals. He reckoned that there was that bear, you know, them big whirly bushes. He reckoned there was them whirly bushes rolling through in the crowds. There was no one on any other field.
Looked like
Even the other teams, they were looking over trying to see what was happening.
It was pumping, and you can imagine the Sydney All Blacks, their rivalries as they go, but the rivalry is going to exist for a few more years. I think they're going to be a big team that people are going to target.
It just sounded like a big game too. Sydney All Blacks versus WAC.
Yeah.
Like those two titles, knowing that the Car and a few of those, and you know they're a good
was a mad
football
game.
team.
yeah,
They're tough.
they had a good.
I'll never forget that crowd. That
It's a
crowd was
good
amazing.
game of footy, and
For any spectator
Yeah.
that didn't have any feel in it as a family member, would have just loved it.
yeah. I reckon everyone still took a side of some sort, even if they weren't following All Blacks or
Yeah.
WAC. They took a side that
You gotta go
that
for
one
someone,
game,
yeah.
and it was edgy seat stuff. I remember, I think it was Windsor got on and done this. He was like he's floating in the air, and this moment we had to sort of really kick off what had been a really back and forth contest
Yeah,
until
good arm wrestle.
Windsor had got the little edge in that contest that you need, and they're the little moments in knockout. I reckon it's those little times that come up in a footy game where you make that special tackle or that special run, and that's the difference between winning or losing in the knockout. I'll tell you, it comes down to them little moments. It can be a drop ball. It can be just one thing that can put you out of the whole knockout. It's a proven fact.
Well, it was proven for years. I remember Walgett putting themselves under pressure for many years, knocking that ball on with a minute to go, or someone giving the head-eye tackle out. It's
I
valuable.
watched it with did you watch that same weekend when Moree played Yowies?
Yeah.
Good game.
And that was a
Really
brilliant
good
game of football, and that's when you knew the Bummies were back, right? When they were playing another powerhouse of the knockout, and you could feel the crowd was there for the Bummies. You could feel they were really in the game. It was back and forth, but then it took one or two little things to not go right. All of a sudden, Yowies got a roll on, scored 2 tries, and the game was over.
Can I have my narc here?
Yep.
When all this was happening on these other fields, I was sitting on the commentary on field 1 watching Redfern number 2 side play someone, because we had the worst games on field 1.
Yeah.
And there was all these great games over there on the other field. And I was sitting there as part of the commentary on NITV because they showcased that field 1.
Yeah.
And we missed all this exciting football.
I think we have to look at that, Dino. I think it's something that some of the biggest and best games that have ever happened in the knockout
Need to be featured.
have happened outside of field 1. Like you think of the game when we played Wollumban that time on field 2 down at Leichhardt, one of the biggest games and best games I've ever been a part of.
Cabo game we talked about down on field
Down
2.
the bottom.
Was it yeah.
There's been games that look like that. So they're just a little adjustments in the schedule where that could easily be shifted to field 1. It doesn't hinder any other games, but allows us to have the best product happen for the knockout, because there's games that only people that watched it can actually witness and say it happened. And there's something that we've got to be able to do as organisers or sort of set standards around what we do on that Sunday in particular.
I agree with what you're saying about making sure you got the best game, the best matchup that can happen to be there and be televised for everyone to see. But I also like that that's also something unique to the knockout, is that you've actually got to be there. And if you miss out, if it doesn't end up on field 1 televised, you had to be there and you had to walk over to field 5 to watch Bunjalung play South Coast Black Cockatoos in one of the great knockout games that wasn't televised, and South Coast come back in the final minutes to win the game when Bunjalung had it won. You've got to be there because you don't know too what's going to end up being a great game.
And it's a good one because we want to showcase that talent, right? Like that Moree side would have had talented young boys in there, but they never got to play a game on TV on field one where everyone's watching. The eyes of the NRL world now is on the knockout football that's played on that weekend.
And we talk about the original, one of the original reasons why the knockout was created was to create opportunities for blackfellas to be seen and get the chance to play NRL footy. And if them young fellas aren't getting seen, if they're not being watched on TV, if you're not there live to see the game, you don't know how good that kid was.
It's in your hands, boys. We talk about this legacy. We talk about this legacy of the knockout. And like, as you spoke earlier, you know, we've heard you talk about your uncle was involved right from the start. You've had heaps of uncles involved, and that legacy you carry, you know, you carry that legacy about taking their hard work and the history of what they created and taking it to the next level. And that's where you're at with that decision making going in the knockout this year.
Well, good segue there. Let's talk a little bit about the decision making on what's happening for this year's knockout. So there is a little bit coming up. So the next delegates meeting, I'll say this right so that we can cut it up and make it look pretty. Next delegates meeting for the knockout will be on the 29th of June, and it'll be held in Bathurst. So we'll get the opportunity to look at the grounds that we're talking. We've talked about how beautiful these grounds are. I'm telling you, it's amazing. 6 really good fields side by side. So it'll be there in Bathurst, and every team that's looking to compete in this year's knockout, I encourage you to get out there so you can see it for yourself. Also to have the opportunity to be a part of the delegates meeting and have your say as well.
Well, you know, can't get better than going to Bathurst. It's got the best conditions that any footballer would want. Nice and cold, good for the big fellas, good for those forwards who want to slow it down and suck in that cold air. They get
I don't know about that, Tuck. I just want hot weather at that time of year. Do you really want
I
cold?
like it nice and cool. I like it nice and cool. You get to enjoy it a bit more.
That's because you're hot. That's why.
Well, you're hot, not mine. Cut that out. No, but I want to.
No, I get what you're saying. It is a good time of year.
I think it goes good for both. It can be a game for forwards, or it can be. Look, to be honest, it's Bathurst. I don't think we've
You could
ever
get
had
4 seasons.
Yeah.
Like that Armidale knockout.
4 seasons.
Freezing, raining, boiling hot, bit of everything. Bit of everything.
All weather.
So the other thing too that's been raised from the previous delegates meeting that was held were some rule changes, and I think there's some really interesting ones coming up. You know, it's, the particular one around Golden Point being in every including the prelim games. Now, currently it exists in the semi-finals and final, but to have Golden Point included in some way rather than first try scorer. So it's been raised by a lot of teams, and you know, over a period of time, it's that rule was around from the start, but it's now a rule that's been looked at to give teams the opportunity to actually decide by winning the game through scoring a try or points in some way rather than first try. What do you think of that, Dino, that rule?
I love it because our young playmakers out there have to now develop that game smarts and how to ice a game, to learn that as part of their artillery and as they develop their football. And that's what we're all about, right, is developing these good young footballers so that they add these different skill sets to their game. And to manage a game and to win a game, ice a game in extra golden point time, it's going to be good for the young players.
Does it change the fabric of the knockout? Like, because that rule's been around since the start now for a period of time. I know it changed. I think Wesley changed it for a little bit, and they changed it back. But obviously now we watch NRL every week, and games are decided through Golden Point, and I find it really exciting. I think it will bring a new dimension into the knockout where people find out the siren goes, it's 4 all over on field 1. They're going into Golden Point. I actually think people will be flocking and they will be running from other ovals once you hear about Golden Point. Now, obviously, it's difficult to play out for a long period of time. I think it would have to be a set time limit before, 5 minutes, and then it reverts back to first try if there's no points scored. But I think that adding in the element of Golden Point will be super exciting for the knockout itself. It brings a new way of getting games decided, but also getting fans even more excited.
But I feel like it just adds to football, like as a whole, the whole committee, whole fan base, where you know your hearts can't be broken just because you haven't scored the first try.
Yeah.
It just creates that's the other dimension where you think they can tackle their ass off here, but if they get this try and not kick it, we're still going to go to golden point. There's a lot that goes into the knockout, and you want it to make it like it doesn't matter how you look at it. In some ways, no one wants to lose a knockout game, but it just gives you that little chance that you think you know, even if they score this try, we might be able to get him back in golden point, or you know what I mean. Like there's a little chance.
Well, I reckon if a game's ended in a draw too, then it's obviously been a really good game, really tight contest. So that extra 5 minutes, I think we're all going to get a bit of a treat to be able to see, you know, who's a bloke who's going to stand up, who's a kid, who's the alpha who's going to stand up and show them how to win a game in that final 5 minutes. I think that's really exciting.
I've been on both sides. I've been knocked out on first try. I've won games on first try. I think it's an opportunity to have something new and to really bring entertainment to its highest level at the knockout. We already enjoy crazy games that go down to the wire, but crazy games that go down to golden point in prelims. This could be something that really elevates the knockout to even a more exciting level to what it is already.
I remember, Matt, back in the day, you'd be saying that's just the knockout, how it works. That's the ruling of the knockout. But, you know, the rules get changed over years. You know, we've had 53 years of the knockout.
Yeah.
Probably played it the same way for the majority of its time. There haven't been many rule changes, but it's a different day and age now. Sometimes in these knockouts that, you know, because it's so fast-paced, the refereeing's a lot different to what people are used to. Like the first try might only come from something someone's made a mistake of, like a touch judge or a referee, or that we want to play.
Now you turn on the refs?
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm trying to find a little way, because poor old Cuzzo always gets the blame for dropping that ball. But you know what I mean? Like it's a game of millimetres, and it can be. There could be something that's a bit grey, and the advantage did go with that other side who scored that, lucky to score that first try.
So what was the other rule changes that were brought up as part of the delegates meeting to be discussed at the next one on the 29th of June?
So there's the 10-minute sin bin for the finals. So I think at the moment written in the rules is that it's 5 minutes in the finals. Now the final game goes to 40 minutes each way. So in the 20-minute each way games, it's currently a 5-minute sin bin. But then in the grand final, when it's 40 minutes each way, you've got a longer period.
I think it's a no-brainer. It has to be 10 minutes.
Has it always been 10 for the finals?
No, it hasn't. It's only at 5. So it's to increase it back up to the normal 10 minutes that it should be as part of knockout. So that myself, I think that's a given. To be honest, it probably leads me into another area, to be honest, boys, is around, the thought process of, does the game need to, do we get to the finals, does it still need to be a 40 minutes each way game? I think it's 30 each way in the semi-final, 40 each way in the final. Now, I've won 4 knockouts. I know what it's like and how you feel at the end of that. Dino, you've done the same thing. What's your thoughts on where that takes us?
Right, I think like the excitement we get out of the Golden Point thing really adds to the whole event. And then at the end of it, to shorten time, because these are big bodies now. They're a lot more physical, the players, than what they have been in the past. The teams are way better than what they have across the depth of the top sides at the knockout. So it's way harder to win. And you get to that last day and you see people dragging their bodies through 30 minutes each way, then into 40 minutes each way. I think the risk of injury.
It's almost cruel.
It is cruel.
So what are you thinking? I
think if you could shorten the final day to games down, 30 minute grand final, 25-minute semi-final each way would be a better result. Because I don't think you need to smash dead bodies that are already broken that hard and especially the physicality of them now. There's that many more NRL players playing on that last day, many more professional players. I think we just got to look after their well-being because otherwise, bro, we're going to risk injuries to some of our biggest stars in the knockout and risk doing damage to what they do for their football for the next, just because of fatigue.
And there's always a chance too for those lesser teams that scrape through to the finals.
For it to be competitive.
The shorter
Absolutely.
game, they can get to go back to your 2 quick tries and defend off a few sets of 6 and hopefully just hang in there, and they can do that in the final and the semis.
I think it creates a whole different dimension in that last day because I mean we've found a way where we feel we've got a process that we do that last day that completely changes from the 2 days prior to that. So I'm open to anything. Always open to making the footy better and also safer. But it is a big rule change, boys. If we were to go down that track, that's a massive rule change.
You'd have to think that a lot of these small communities out there would love it.
I'd love it.
Because realistically, their chances against sides with big depth and
professional
players aren't that good over 40 minutes each way. But if you're going to you guys, you're going to disadvantage yourselves here because if you just make a rule change like it, you're actually disadvantaging the team because you've got good depth. You've got players that are very fit, that train hard. That suits them the 40 minutes on the last day.
It brings back
to be able to grind out.
But if you're giving an advantage away to opposition, so you think that these other communities would go, that's actually a pretty fair thing.
It's only good for the knockout though.
For me, from an entertainment point of view, I think and you touched on it, Tom, was the style of footy that you play in 20 minutes each way footy is exciting. It's entertaining. You put it on the line and you know that you score a couple of quick tries, you can defend that and you're pretty safe. Whereas the style of footy that you play in a 30-minute each way, in a 40-minute each way, it's a complete different style of footy. It's grinding, it's kicking long. You look at the way that we play on a Monday is completely different to the footy that we played on Saturday and Sunday. Saturday and Sunday is it's probably the best footy. It's most exciting footy. Whereas that grand final on a Monday arvo, when your body's busted,
can be a drag.
It can be a drag.
I find that Sunday football is the best football knockout, no doubt about it. And obviously your first round matchups in those key teams, and then you fast forward it to the final. I was talking to Matt before the grand final last year. He said, "Tuck, come over here for yarn." And he said, "What do you reckon we should do in this grand final?" And I'm like, I just thought about it. These fellas are going to be tough. How are we going to slow it down? Because they were fast and they were just beating teams 40, 50 to 6, whatever. And I said, just slow it down, kick to the corner. He said, nah. He said, fuck it. We're just going to kick it long and we're just going to go hard at them and jam them and do what we can. Anyway, the game come out a lot different. They come out fast and hard and they scored the 2 tries. Yeah. And then we come home with a wet sail because we had the grinding football. And also we had the experience of playing in a grand final, and we had those 40-minute players, fellas who play week in, week out for the long game. And so it was sort of totally different what we started like we both thought.
Yeah, I think you're giving yourself a rap there. I don't remember that conversation. I think you might have dreamt that, but that conversation didn't happen.
He pulls me out about 20 minutes before the game, and the boys are and he goes, "Tuck, come at the back here." And I said, "What are you going to do?" And I said,
I don't think I saw him all weekend.
No, I've never seen Tuck. That's what I'm saying. I said to you earlier, the one thing I did say to you earlier, I said, "Tuck, you got to do more work because I didn't see you at the knockout." And you agreed with me.
Yeah, you know what?
Turned up for the final to write the game plan.
I'll tell you something about the knockout fellas that people don't know. So there's always a big following, right, of football teams, and there's always about 20 other fellas who come along and jump in beyond the bench who never had nothing to do with it for 12 months. So I go
what,
to...
do you reckon couple come in for
Yeah,
us,
so we get to the first game and we get
there was no one there and all of a sudden we had 40 people?
No, we get to the first game and our mates on the sideline for the Sydney All Blacks team, and he said after the game, he said, "Look, I had to tell you fellas, get off that bench." There was about 30 people there behind the footballers. He said, "Johnny, got two people and that's it." So anyway, Dewey comes in afterwards and he goes, "Now, boys, it's a must that only 2 officials and 2 other fellas, 4 people can only go in there." So anyway, we get to the game the next day and honestly, when I thought I was a part of that little crew too. I'll get to the game. Yeah, when I went into the crew next day, there was about 10 people behind.
They still pushing you back?
Yeah, and I thought, I just went and jumped on the other side of the fence, man. I said, fuck you, I'm going.
So that's why you went missing until we made the final.
Yeah, so I went down. Every time I tried it, and then we had the meeting again, boys. Now, tomorrow it's a must. You can't go behind the bench. And Matt's going to me, Tucky, make sure these fellas are only doing that. And I said, okay then. And so I walked in there and there was about 10 fellas. And you think I'm going to tell 10 fellas to get out of the way?
Right,
So
okay,
anyway, I'm going to clarify that.
That's an interesting point. I think how long the final goes for is a great talking point for the next delegates meeting. I don't know if a decision could be made off that. It'd be a long conversation about the benefits and how can because you only change a rule to benefit the knockout year. You don't want to change it to hinder it. So it's a big decision. So I think it's a great one for people to debate and talk about.
I'd love to hear your thoughts. Anyone tuning in too, make sure you share your thoughts on what you think the final day should look like at the knockout.
Yeah. The toll on players now. We won our first as we were younger fellas, and we've seen teams win them as we're a lot older. And I just see the toll on players is a lot harder now than what it was back then. And we got to be realistic. The knockouts were hard, tough.
That's really built footballers too.
In a different way when we played young, but the physical toll now, as far as the pace of the game, the collisions and the impact of the collisions, it's way worse at the knockout than what it was when I was playing.
Well, I guess the other point, the other rule that could be looked at is, 25 players was something that's been around for a long period of time. Now, are we at a point where there's additional players that 28? Can be added to the 25? I mean, that's another thing. People think 25 is a lot, but as you know, when you actually go to win it, by the end of it, you're probably missing at least 5 to 6 going into the final. In some cases, I think the year before we had 15 fit players.
I think there was 18 players.
Yeah, so
I had to run on with broken ribs.
So
did Ted land?
So that's another way of looking at being able to increase how many players you have. Because as we all know, once you lock in your 25, that's your 25 regardless injuries or anything like that. So I'd like to think that at the next delegates meeting. How many players we have is
a good point.
And
another one.
I think, brother, the intent has got to be sort of highlighted because you fellas could play 40 minutes each way and it's going to suit you. You're giving up a big advantage, and I hope that these fellas realise that the intent of what you're trying to give you, you're looking after the knockout, right? Yeah. Because you're not making a whack decision here because this is actually disadvantaging whack.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's about us, and I think it's about we wouldn't make that decision based off us anyway. I'm talking about as a whole.
You're making the best decision for the whole.
And you're not having to go at him either.
I'm saying you're making a decision that's going to make it hard
sitting
against
around
your
at
team.
a delegates meeting going, what does everyone think? And it might take us the next 12 months or 2 years to come to the decision of changing those subjects. But if we don't begin the conversation and start to look at little things like player numbers and how long the duration of finals games, if we don't look at it now, then we may never come up with that decision.
Because you're right, it takes away that advantage of experience. When you say, look, they know how to win on a Monday because they've been there before. They've experienced it before. If the Monday's completely changed when it's no longer 30 and 40 minutes, then no one's got that experience. So it starts from square one.
He's going to be the first knockout team that's ever hosted a knockout that their first delegates meeting, they're trying to make rules that are actually going to make it harder for themselves.
Yeah,
because everyone else goes in to make rules to make it easier for themselves.
But them rules never usually get up. The ones that try to advantage the teams, they never usually get up. Whereas I think if
you're being selfless with yourself.
Yeah, if we think like that and go, I'm just thinking to my head now, right? How exciting Saturday and Sunday football is.
I love Sunday.
Now, if we bring back for Monday to be this,
Sunday.
Let's use cricket for example, that 2020 type approach, where that's what excites cricket, right? They move to the 2020. It's the same with knockout. The reason what makes our knockout unique is is that every game you can get knocked out, and it's only a short period of time you play for. You don't have enough time to get it right. You've got 20 minutes each way, and you got to get it right.
Playing under pressure the whole time.
It goes right through to the final. That final, you can afford to make mistakes. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
You can afford to kick it out in the full. You can afford to do.
Some of our worst football scene.
It is some of our worst.
It'll
football.
save a few brothers getting yelled at because you got another chance to come back into the game if you drop the ball.
Oh yeah, on the final. I've made mistakes in finals where I remember Trenny done a brilliant 40-20 once.
And you
that was
dropped it off the scrum.
Yeah, and I dropped it off the scrum. The boys were that no one said nothing, but they were,
It was 15 years ago, but we still
against
You didn't hear it, but he said
Yeah, it was
something.
against Minder.
That's why they would have
Well,
told.
Trenny looked at me. He didn't have to say anything, but I mean,
Maddest 40-20
It was
too.
and it basically was setting us up to win the knockout, and we didn't have to go in the golden point. We would have won anyway. I dropped it off. I tried to go around. I dropped it off the kickoff or something. I dropped it off the scrum. But my point being is you can.
Recover
There's so many different things that happen in that 40 minutes each way, which I agree with you, Dino. Is it lessens the quality of football, and it's not. And we've seen grand finals. We've seen some great grand finals, and again, we may just sit here and go by the end of it, sit around a delegates meeting and say, you know what, we love the 40 minutes each way. There's been some great grand finals that have come about. You know, there's
Most of them they come about
Your
because
one?
the scores were even at the end, not because of the length of the time.
No, you're right. But the scores were even. It went for a long period of time, and you know, it was something that by the end of it, you got a huge result in terms of the way someone won. Walgett Minder, I mean Redfern and NAB. There tends to be a lot of close finals still.
But a team that could scrape through, they can just turn their mind on for that shorter game to say, look, we only got to survive 25. Let's just go hard.
Well, put it this way, I wouldn't want to play Toomala or Moree or
Anyone that's
any of
fast
those
weak
football.
connections
any of
last
those
year.
real
The 40
exciting.
minutes, we know, like we've been around. The 40 minutes hurts them teams.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're playing Toomala and that, that's going to hurt them
I'm
that
telling
last
you,
day.
if
It'll bring
those-
the little teams back into it.
well, I'm
I don't
telling
know
you,
though, because you haven't seen them in that game yet. You haven't seen them in that game.
I'm
If they're
hoping
scoring
it does.
points,
I'm hoping it does.
if they're scoring points,
yeah, it's tricky.
But I just want to say, though, if we do go back to the 30-man squad, who's going to wear number 30 to start with? And have I got a chance still to make the 30?
Well, you're the main advisor. You're giving Matt advice
You
before
need
the
to turn
grand
up
final.
first, right? You just listen.
he turns up for the final.
You
I
turn
know
up-
that. He was there like this here for the final.
I'll see you
We did
usually
it.
first one, and then
I was there the whole time.
By the end of it, you was walking out doing the minute silence with me. I didn't see you all weekend.
Cousins, I'm telling you, I went to get in the booth, but they said there was only allowed to be 4 when there was 6 more.
No, I'm excited about this year. I think at our
do we get
next.
to 30 or not? Number
No,
30.
I'm not going to answer that. The next delegates meeting, we've got some real interesting conversations to happen around the rules. Again, encourage all teams to come along that have entered for this year's knockout, because you know there's some real decisions there that can impact. You know, Golden Point is a huge one that's on the table at the moment. It's been put up, I know, for the last probably 5 or 6 years. It's been raised at delegate meetings and hasn't quite got to the next stage. But with the feedback we've got off a lot of teams, it looks like Golden Point is really on the table this year for the prelim games. So it's something that I feel is going to be an exciting addition if it does get over the line with everyone.
Can I frame my proposal in there about changing the field one, the good games, and getting that in there?
Chuck it in there.
I want to see that best because I think as we get the bigger
But you
crowd that
can't
watches it,
coach, run everything, and get all them. How many different things you want to be a part of?
but I just think the more the TV audience is getting bigger. They're watching the games. That means more opportunities for our players to be
100%.
showcased. Sponsorship and stuff is even bigger than when you do it. It helps everyone across the board if we can get the best games on that TV coverage.
Well, people already know that the knockout's unreal. Like I'm telling people, where you going, mate, for your day? And I feel like I'm a bit of a big nut. I'm going to do a knockout podcast. And they go, oh, yeah, what's that about? The Koori knockout. Yeah, I know about that. And then you put you keep putting these quality games on there. Like,
It's exposure for our mob.
Yeah.
That's all we're trying to do. You know,
It's
get
just-
them the best teams, the best games.
Better
all
for the
seen
eye.
On good video records of it. It's beautiful. It's like, And I was just last year, I was just that disappointed that these good games were happening and we just didn't get to showcase the best ones on TV.
Like, that would have been a game to watch.
But again, I will come back
Yes,
to
and you got
saying that, it's the beauty of being there is that you get to do that. But I would love to be able to showcase some of these great games because, like I said, over the years, we've had some great games we've missed out on.
Well, I want to go back to the 25 and 30-minute finals too, because when it is the final, 40 minutes, whatever it is, sometimes I've even driven home on the Monday because it's a long day. You know you're going to get a drawn-out game. Depends what teams you got left over. But if I know she's going to be 25 and 30 minutes, you know you're going to get a good game of football. You know what I mean? Like it'll make a lot more people stay.
As a fan, you don't get that same feeling watching.
I think what's changed, boys, but we've got to be fair with this, is what's changed the grand final on the Monday, right, is the fact that we now have a broadcast partner that showcases the knockout on the Sunday and the Monday, right? Yeah. So for a long period of time, we didn't have a broadcast partner. And when they did come in, SBS a little bit, early days, it might even been ABC. I remember Rick doing the commentary a little bit. And it wasn't really a big exposure thing as it is now. I feel over the last, probably since Lismore knockout, I remember we went up to Lismore and they showcased, I think NITV showcased that weekend. And ever since Lismore, it's probably kicked on bigger and better each year. And that allowed people to come to usually the Friday, Saturday and start to head home on the Sunday because they know they could sit back at home. And like you said, it's a big television audience now to sit back and watch it. It happens. It happens. And that's why that's changed, I think, because before you stayed around because you wanted to know who won and watch the game. Whereas now you can slip home and watch it at home like we do with the NRL and everything else and sit. And that's why some people don't even go to the knockout anymore. They still love the knockout, but they can sit at home and watch it from the Sunday, Monday at least.
You don't move?
Nah. So, but I like the idea that at least that might entice people to stay back on that Monday to go, I'm in for an exciting day of football on the Monday.
If you know a Kempsey side's in there or Moree or any coastal or any team that you've followed all week, especially if you've followed a surprise packet team all weekend who's got these, never heard of these fellas before. They've got these fast fellas. You just never know. They might knock off a gun side just because they've got those minutes in them, those 20, 30 minutes in them. But a bit longer, it's hard.
Well, for all teams looking to participate in the 2024 knockout, make sure you attend the Delegates meeting on 29th of June in Bathurst. We will be discussing these rule changes, including the golden point and the 10-minute sin bin, and these discussions that are happening here now about the timing of the finals and everything else that's been brought up. So if you want to participate in that, you're a delegate of a team and you're participating in the 2024 knockout, make sure you come out to Bathurst on the 29th of June. We'll share a bit of the event week schedule that we've got planned coming up for the knockout as well.
Yeah, I think probably one of the biggest things is probably around the draw, George. I know that the men's draw this year will take place on the Thursday night. Usually it's around the Wednesday. In other cases, I think last year was a lot earlier, about a week before. But we're excited to make a week-long event where teams start to roll in from the Thursday, Friday, and we can have a big moment where we can get as many teams as possible represented on that Thursday night. It's not going to affect the men's draw in any way. I mean, everyone's got to be there by the Friday anyway because you get there a day before the knockout. But the Thursday night, we roll out. We've got a big draw to happen at the Bathurst Entertainment Centre. And as part of that, we're excited by the fact that we're only a day out from when the carnival starts, which is the Friday for the juniors and the women's. But that should be an exciting draw. You know, I don't know if you guys remember, but the draw used to be done on the Friday night.
Oh, how good was it?
You know, and you'd be there on the Friday night and you'd be going, I've got to get home on first game. And the draw mightn't finish till 12 o'clock that night. Now, it never used to be broadcast, and usually they'd mess around that much. The draw didn't kick off till about 10 o'clock that night. There'd be games starting at 8 o'clock the next morning, and you could be in a blockbuster the next morning and not know until 12 o'clock that night.
Right, how good was it? They used to go, Nambucca Rams will play. And then there would be a pause, There'd be rain. It'll just be over the microphone. Everyone's sitting at the ground.
Yeah.
And they'll call out the next team.
Oh, Andy be doing it too. You couldn't hear her.
I just remember that calling each name out, will play.
Yeah.
And then the next team, and then they'll go, and then Walgett will play. And everyone will get that little excitement. And you just sit there and at the field and you just hear it over the microphone at the field.
Newcastle Yowies versus Nambucca Rams. And it didn't matter. Everyone was still had the excitement.
No, it was good. So we're hoping to bring back that excitement. There's some big plans for that night. I know that we've got a community day that we're working on, George. When's that going to be?
So we'll look at doing a community day on the Wednesday, the 2nd of October. So the event week will look this way. So we'll do the women's and junior comp draw on Friday the 27th. So there's a week to plan into that. We'll do the community day on Wednesday the 2nd of October out there in Bathurst. The men's draw will take place on the Thursday night. Again, really exciting night. We're going to try and bring back the excitement for that. Friday, the games kick off. We've got women's and the junior comp on the Friday, into the men's comp on the Saturday, Sunday, finals day on Monday, and it's going to be a really good time.
Any after party for the draw?
Yeah, there'll be after party there.
Down the Ox or what?
Yeah. We'll have to work out where the after party goes.
Missing out on
DJ
after
Ginzel
parties.
or something?
That's it. We got your bread there as the main DJ.
At a Kelso.
There you go,
He'll be there,
Gins.
so-
You might give you a bit of a go here.
Lock us in. We'll be at the after. We'll be at the after party.
We'll be signing autographs. We'll be the only two sober fellas there. What do you reckon?
Run the podcast out of the.
We'll run
At the after party.
After party podcast.
We can do the podcast.
That could be dangerous,
What,
actually.
we can do the podcast at the gate where they go
I do
into
like
the
the
Ox.
idea though.
Yeah.
Lukey, you free?
Well,
Just Ted can go live with us.
yeah. So just back on that delegates meeting, it's a great chance to the site visit will happen. I know that there's been a few teams that come out initially when we announced the site. We probably had 6 or 8 teams in, but it's a great opportunity for teams to come out and look firsthand at not only how the ovals are, how the city is going to look to embrace the knockout, and basically how you can get around and understand what will be a terrific weekend of knockout football.
I know one thing people will notice when they get there, you only got KFC and Macca's up the road.
Oh, yeah, he's not far.
they
There's
gotta
no
get
doubt
his-
KFC's running out. I've never gone to a knockout where KFC hasn't run out of food, so I think I've already called the mayor of Bathurst. He's going to have to do something. We're going to have to get as much KFC there as possible because
it's walking distance.
They're going to love it, eh?
Oh.
They're going to go from that. They're going to get the races. They're going to get the lot.
They'll sell out. They'll still sell out.
You reckon they'll sell
Prepare
out?
for extra. They don't know.
Reckon?
They're that close. It's that close to them fields. Everyone's going to be there.
Can you get a bit of KFC Devon? Do you reckon that'd go or what? No one cares. No one cares.
That could happen in your kitchen, Tuck. But I'm signing off for the day, boys.
Yeah. Me too. Me too.
Have I passed that?
Stay tuned for Tuck's cooking show coming up. Thanks for tuning in again to the Koori Knockout podcast. A lot of important information shared there today. We'll make sure that everyone's getting in on that information. If you've got a comment on any of them rule changes, any of them ideas, feel free to jump in, comment, share. Have a yarn with everyone else. See what everyone else is saying. And we'll see all of them delegates at the delegates meeting on the 29th of June out in Bathurst. Information will be emailed out to all of the teams who are competing in the 2024 knockout. Thanks for tuning in to the Knockout podcast.